Alright, the KC Cup has concluded. In this video, I will talk about my deck and also show some replay highlights from the final day of playing. Before I head into everything, I want to whip out my KC Cup wish list. Number 1, limited duels. I feel the whole weekend should be limited to 100 duels total instead of being unlimited dueling. This allows you to still compete for a top global spot without having to ruin your entire 3-day weekend while still needing to dedicate a lot of time for the event. Number 2, I would like for Konami to give actual rewards. Doing well in a KC Cup should at the very least give tickets that could be used to buy packs from a box. Instead, your account gains 0 future value after doing well in a KC Cup. Another good reward would be to gain points towards qualifying for Worlds. In the TCG, they have a point system to qualify for Worlds outside of the Worlds qualifier. And great players like Billy Break were able to go to Worlds because of that system and doing well in regional tournaments. Basically, the KC Cup is only good for practicing for the World Championship qualifier to prove that you're capable and for bragging rights. Number 3, make the KC Cup more competitive. Your duels should be best of 3, not best of 1 game. Ideally with a side deck, like how Real Life Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic the Gathering are played. If you 2-0 your opponent during the KC Cup, you should gain 50% more points and lose 50% more points if you get 2-0'd yourself. This would make the KC Cup much more skillful and be a real representation of besting your opponent. Now, it probably didn't have an impact on how KC Cups are ran today, but I did suggest for KC Cups to be a 3-day event after the first one was a 1-week event, and maybe Konami listened. As many of you already knew, I was out of state away from home for KatsuCon, which is a very large convention that we fly out to every year, which the KC Cup decided to be on the same weekend for. It also happens to be the one time a year I give in and cosplay for Gianna, so it's very special for her. Anyway, the weekend was fun, and I only managed to play around 40 games during the weekend when I had a stable connection in the hotel room. My only issue during the weekend duels were a restart glitch crashing the game and a loss or 2 from random time limit losses, so I managed a 16k score. On the final day of the KC Cup after my plane ride, I arrived home at around 5 p.m. with the event ending at midnight for me. So I was able to play 50 more games and went from 16k to 34k, then I stopped in the last hour or 2. Overall, I played close to 100 games with about a 68 to 70% win rate. There was a big change from the last KC Cup, which was one of the major reasons for overall points being lower for everyone than the last KC Cup. That change was that Konami was no longer randomly matching you against anyone. They were actually attempting to matchmake you with players doing as well as you were. This is similar to the same system they had for the first ever KC Cup. Also, there were no clear best decks for this event. Last KC Cup 3-star Demotion Ninjas and Cyber Angels were clearly much better than any other deck. Every deck in this KC Cup was very similar in power. Knowing I wasn't going to be able to seriously compete for this KC Cup, I decided to qualify on a second account with a very limited card pool. So I decided to run Gladiators, which I feel was the best choice for this event if you were to only run one deck. While ideally I wanted to run 3 Floodgates and 3 Wall of Disruptions, I only had access to 1 Floodgate and 2 Wall of Disruptions. Because the matchmaking wasn't random, there were noticeable meta shifts that you needed to adapt to, like Ephyra Angels becoming less popular. Curse of Anubis and Windstorm are great for the mirror match. Curse of Anubis is great against a RedEyes Spirit Storm play. You must chain Curse of Anubis to Storm before they activate RedEyes Spirit. This will force their RedEyes into defense, but not if you allow them to chain RedEyes Spirit to the Storm. Impenetrable Attack, while I would have preferred more Floodgates, was definitely good when playing against the Burn Stall deck using Death's Counterblow. Death's Counterblow is a continuous trap where your monster gets destroyed after dealing damage. So Impenetrable Attack would protect your Gladiator from dying and then be able to tag out. And Enemy Controller is necessary for winning the mirror match. Now on to the games. All of these highlights were from just the last day of the event. I surprisingly had many great games on the final day that I was sadly not able to catch a replay of every one of them. I think for future KC Cups, I will properly set up my phone to mass record a ton more footage. This game is against Hazy, which is the worst matchup for Gladiators. Your enemy controllers and Gladiator Murmillo are essentially useless because you cannot target the Hazy Flame monsters with effects. So your only way to destroy a Hazy Flame is to have a boosted Lakari and or fusion summon, or they must swing into a wall disruption. Here's a game against RedEyes. The main thing about the RedEyes matchup is you need to plan to survive a storm play or do whatever you can to lessen the damage it could deal to you by forcing Bestiary to pop their back row and or force them to make plays with their back row. If you sit patiently against RedEyes, then you are waiting to lose to a storm. A great card against Storm, like I said earlier, is Curse of Anubis, because if chained before RedEyes Spirit, their RedEyes Zombie will be in defense. If you survive a storm or set yourself up to not lose to one, you should easily win versus RedEyes Zombies. This is against Gladiators.
Duel.
Enemy controller is incredibly important in this matchup, and many do not know how to use it correctly. Right here he loses because he enemy controllered and I was able to chain to it. If he did not enemy controller, my plan was to Bestiary the enemy controller and to force that same scenario to happen again. You need to understand the priority on who can use enemy controller first, how to play with the toggle, who could tag out first, and when in order to use your enemy controller properly. This is something I quickly highlighted and explained in my KC Cup guide on the Discord. Another Gladiator match.
Duel.
I go for a big enemy controller play. I want to pop his back row before I commit to an enemy controller, because if I use it early, then I could be countered by his own enemy controller. It is an enemy controller, which I can now safely enemy controller his Gladiator that was in battle, all before he is even able to tag out his monster. You're able to easily and confidently make plays like this when you understand the priority of each player and when they can use their effects. Here we have a match against Dinos. As long as Dinos can't lock up and or remove all of your back row, you should be able to win this. Karibo is a great card against Dinos. So when Dinos were popular, I would suggest a Karibo, but I felt like Dinos kind of fell off during the KC Cup, which made Karibo less necessary to deal with them messing up your back row. Just like against RedEyes zombies, you must play aggressive before they could lock you up or remove all of your back row, and then you just win how Gladiators usually win, Murmillo and Bestiari.
Duel.
Now here's a quick game versus Ephyra Angels. Wall of Disruption is incredibly important here, which he discards from my hand. Luckily, we are later able to pay him back with a double enemy controller. Make sure you don't mindlessly econ take a Dkayed when you possibly have game with it next turn.
Duel.
Here's another RedEyes zombie matchup, which is quite popular in the KC Cup. Once again, we are being very aggressive as I don't set enemy controller because I plan on using it. Game over once he swings in my bestiary. I wall of disruption my own Lakari for two good reasons. One, I have gamed through Bacon Saver thanks to Demakari. Number two, many people were teching in Gladiator Andal, which is a 1900 attack normal monster. That one tech allows you to econ take a Gladiator and then tag it out for an Andal, which I would have straight up lost to right there.
Duel.
Here's my final Gladiator match, Mind Scan vs. Balance. I was planning on crashing the bestiary into his using Impenetrable Attack. With Impen Attack, I am safe from his Murmillo effect. I choose to Floodgate the Lakari in case he is able to stop my attack again. It also has the added benefit of stopping Super Rush, which many people weren't playing anyway. As soon as the attack goes through, it was over for him, as long as I still played carefully.
Duel.
And here's my final highlight game, against Magnets. If I have a way to put my opponent into defense, or I have an impenetrable attack, I usually always swing without caring for a wall of disruption. This is a moment where I need to use both Wall of Disruptions as he sadly does not commit to summoning a second monster. The mirror wall took me by surprise, but did not put me into a losing position. This is where I decide to carefully play around anti-magic arrows. As soon as the prompt told me that he wanted to enter the battle phase, I enemy controller his Valkyrion and he surrenders. If you did not have your toggle to on, or you would have not used enemy controller on his summon, you would have definitely lost to an anti-magic arrows right here. He destiny draws for the card. He does his whole play without using that card that he added. He definitely added an anti-magic arrows. That's it for the video. I hope you all enjoyed. Thanks for watching.